So, hi everyone, welcome to the screening of two short films by artists Laura Sundermann and Krzysztof Honowski. Thank you so much for coming this evening. So we're very happy to welcome for the first time in Iceland this artist duo who came all the way from Cologne in Germany. With this event tonight, we'll look at two films, but we'll also have the opportunity later to see some new works of the artist duo at the Y Gallery in Kopelberg for an international collective exhibition, which will open on the 7th of October. This exhibition will also include the works of British artist Bradley Davies and Danish Icelandic artist Sóley Ragnarsdóttir. And this exhibition and this event are curated by German curator Christopher Gerberding, who couldn't be here with us. So here I am, standing in for him. I also co-curated this event with him, and we're very happy to be here at the Nordic House to present these two films. So a bit more about the artists. So Laura Sundermann is a German actress who has worked mainly in theater. She's worked in many state theaters in Germany, in Frankfurt, Cologne, or Berlin. And she has also experience working for the radio or television. And she often collaborates with visual artists, which I found like a very interesting aspect of your practice, such as Marwa Arsenios at the Ludwig Museum in Cologne, or with Krzysztof Honowski. So Krzysztof was born in London from Polish parents and has studied mainly in England. But now he's doing a PhD in art theory at the Art Academy of Vienna in Austria. And we can say that, and you're, of course, sorry, I forgot one essential part, is that you mainly make films and that your films have been shown in many art festivals around the world, like in Brazil and Mongolia and Europe, like really everywhere. Yeah. So when working together, you explore the condition of exile through both historical facts and individual stories, through the feeling of being alienated, which I found very interesting to discuss. And tonight we will see first the short movie called Beasts of No Nation, which was made in 2019. You say about this film that it's an essay film of 10 minutes, and it's been presented in Cannes, in France, in Kiev, in Ukraine, Istanbul, Turkey, and too many other countries to really tell them all. And this film has been directed by Krzysztof, and you act in this movie. So that's interesting, because the following film is a film that you're co-directing. And Beast of No Nation is about the loneliness of roller coasters, and also refers a lot to Brexit, which is an interesting contrast.
And the upcoming nationalism.
Yeah. And then the second film that we'll see is a work in progress, which is very exciting because it's not often that films in progress are being presented to the public like that. And it's named Black Kryptonite Mountain, which is a very cool title, I have to say. And there is also the prospect for you being in Iceland to actually shoot maybe some scenes here. This work in progress deals with technology and nature as being two unstable entities, creating a precarious environment. And there are also echoes of Greek mythology in the daily life. So that's also like a very interesting aspect, something I haven't seen much. And yeah, after watching these two films, we will have a conversation about your works, and you're very welcome to ask questions then. So yeah, please make yourself comfortable and let's enjoy the screening.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
That was some kind of a journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing with us this work in progress. I feel very privileged to have been able to see it. My first question is about the first film we watched, Beasts of No Nation. I spotted the Polish flag and also the British flag standing next to each other. And since I know that you have a dual identity, wanted to ask you, like, what's your relationship with these two countries?
Yeah, I guess the symbolism is subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's been an interesting and privileged position growing up with a dual identity, especially somewhere like the UK. But I feel like something that one was at a certain time quite proud of has become a very confusing sort of state of being now. And yeah, and while we were making this film, it was interesting because I was in the process of getting German citizenship, because I was extricating myself from the whole sort of Brexit situation. So it felt like it's been, yeah, it's complicated in the best possible way, and also in some ways the worst, because the last few years have borne out that the most conservative impulses of those countries have completely come to the fore, to the point where it feels, especially in the UK, that there is absolutely no alternative to the way that things are. They can just be managed better, which is very confusing, I guess, if you grew up at like it says in the film, at this moment of great sort of quasi-democratic flowering, which of course wasn't, because if you see the consequences of what has happened in Poland in the intervening years, it's very much the case that that's the result of how that aspect of yeah, this great hopeful moment was managed by, you know, democratic and non-democratic forces, I guess. So, yeah, I'm glad that I'm a German citizen now.
So do you still have like British or Polish citizenship, or did you?
I still have British citizenship.
Okay, yeah.
It was, yeah, that was what was really nice about, you know, it was like Angela Merkel's Germany had something quite cuddly about it. Like they didn't do anything for 15 years, but they were nice to people.
Okay.
So especially with the Brexit thing, they let us keep our nationality. They got us through. Very, very odd experience, being so. Yeah, having to deal with bureaucracy in a sort of, yeah, I could almost call it like a, yeah, your whole future was depending on who you are, like, you know, the piece of paper that says where you've come from.
Yeah. How do you feel about like the concept of national identity? Is it problematic?
I think it's horrible, but it's something that's entirely like was very present in my youth. I think especially in a big city like London, although there was a time when people would give up their nationality, give up their identity, anglicize their names and so on, it's very much the case that there are parallel societies within that sort of city. And I definitely grew up in a Polish society within a quasi-English cosmopolitan society. And in many ways, I wouldn't trade that for anything. On the other hand, I feel like it's completely, it's utterly difficult because it shows how much people can't really integrate, and how much this question of integration, how difficult it continues to be, and will always perhaps be, unless we find a different solution to the one that the conservative agenda seems to present to us. I mean, a lot of my work has been considered with these hidden histories where, like, my parents came to the UK as refugees, and for many, many years they didn't have like a settled status. Almost like, in the case of my mum, more than a decade. And these sort of things, they're not even that's not even a part of our reality now. And Brexit brought that a bit more into focus. It became it suddenly became real again.
Yeah, I understand. I have a question, but I hope it's not too personal. But because I'm very interested now in knowing that you took the German citizenship. So does it feel? Do you have a sense of belonging in Germany that is maybe stronger than another country, or?
I think that's a television personality song, a sense of belonging. It's difficult to say, isn't it? 'Cause I think the older you get, the more you realize you sort of have to settle somewhere. You can't just... what was fascinating about life, perhaps before Brexit, is that it seemed like a very normal thing to go from the UK to Germany and back again, and sometimes you would work in one place, sometimes you would work in another. I think for foreigners living in Iceland, it's more difficult because it's quite far away. Whereas actually Cologne and London, it's a couple of hours. It's nothing. But now it's like a really huge distance again. And so, I guess I call Germany my home. Yeah.
Because at the end of Beast of No Nation, the narrator says, nothing very much happens to us. And maybe this is just my interpretation, but it feels like something happens to you when you find the sense of belonging, when you just feel welcomed by another country. So maybe in the end something did happen, hopefully. Trying to see the positive side.
No, sure. It would be completely disingenuous to say that we're here.
And also, I think we are in Europe.
Exactly.
We're still in Europe, and at the borders of Europe, it looks completely different. So we are still in a very safe position. And when we had to get your passport and all the documents in Cologne, we were in this, I don't know how you call it in English, the Ausländerbehörde. So where you go as when you come from another country to bring your documents, to change it and to get the right to live here. There were so many people there from countries where you knew that for them it's going to be 100,000 times more difficult to get into Germany. And I think that's what I like about this last sentence, because it's divided in a way. Yeah.
And about your artist duo, I'm very curious to hear about how you work together, because your collaborators, you're also a romantic couple. So how do projects emerge? Like, is it from daily conversations, or do you have like to schedule time together that you dedicate to work?
I mean, it all started in a way because Chris often asked me, Laura, can you be in some of my projects? I need an actress. I need a voice. And I was always like, yeah, of course. But also I thought, hey, I'm a theater actress, and I didn't really understand how Chris was working. I didn't understand myself as a maybe participant artist. So it took a while. And then when Chris asked me for the Beasts of No Nation film, I immediately understood the setting because it was like a stage. I mean, you saw the two flags and you see this area, this guy sitting there, and I had props in my hand. I had a dog and I had this selfie stick, so I was in a theater setting in a way. So I think that's how it started, and I somehow immediately understood what he wanted to tell, even if I didn't really understood the text in a way. But so that was for me somehow a starting point, because what I was often missing in theater was a kind of more abstract way of telling things, and a more silent way to tell things, because on stage you always have to take the whole room, it has to be very loud. And film, and especially experimental film, allows you to be more abstract. And maybe it cannot be understood, but it allows you more to go into an inside world, which you also have when you are on stage, but you just have it for yourself most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you say abstract, does it mean that like the person you interpreted in the Beast of No Nation, this woman in this yellow coat with the selfie stick, like for example, it's a character that doesn't have a name, that doesn't have a history, that it's like a...
Exactly.
What
it's
is it
just
exactly?
it's just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a character, but it's a moment. And it's for me also the abstract. What I understand as abstract is that you can put images together which are not at first sight connected, or you would put texts in that are not where you think, where's the connection? And it sometimes happens in theater, but most of the time you tell it one story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting. And Chris has this kind of strange installations where I think it's really interesting when they are in between. And we often work in places where we are when we are on holiday, we shoot. When we are traveling, we shoot. So, for example, the hotel room in Beasts of No Nation was in Brussels. So we did shoot and made a whole improvisation about being a prostitute, because this hotel was a brothel 100 years ago. So we were there in that room for like 7 hours shooting. Mm-hmm. And we took this material for that film because for us, Brussels as the capital of Europe, it somehow fitted. And we shot in Ostende, which was at that time like the beach, and then there was Great Britain, but it was kind of end of Europe. So that we started with that, working like that, I think in 2018.
Yeah. The shots in Belgium are from 2018, so that's sort of how long that film was being made. Like it was all like a year. Mm-hmm. I guess they're a bit like paintings, in that they're abstract moments that you as a viewer can project into. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a lot of information that we're offering to interpret within that, but you can like project it into those figures, and I always find it really joyful in experimental film that you can project, that you can leave space for the viewer to like find their own sort of way through it, mm-hmm. without it becoming a choose your own adventure sort of thing. You can
but still that was always the point, because you just asked, we are a romantic couple. that was always the moment where we were like fighting, because I'm thinking like in a very dramatic way, coming from the theater, I'm still always looking for kind of a story and for kind of a development, like first act, second, third act, and like somehow putting things together, and which is very interesting because your pace, I think, is completely different. And so that is this kind of interaction, I think, is something I really like, because yeah, he comes up, he had a totally different view on things, and yeah, I really like that.
I always find it really interesting when Laura puts in sort of more canonical literary texts, which I would normally be afraid of, because, you know, I also studied literature, and I think, oh God, no, I have to put in the things that are completely, like, you know, the strange things that no one's ever heard of, because that way, like, because no one's ever heard of them, so they should have heard of them. But in a way, it's also really, like, great to revisit a sort of like the canon and see how you can reinterpret it in this context, like that Thomas Mann text about time, which is just over like a bunch of people on their way to a night out in Cologne. So and like just these layerings are often things that I wouldn't normally come up with, and that then Laura puts it on the table, and I think we complement each other in a really interesting way.
Yeah, the scenes where we see these two characters in like this big dresses and the masks, like these images are really striking, and somehow it makes me relate to theater. Am I touching something that like you're working on in this regard?
It is. We had an exhibition in a museum which is an old castle.
Yeah.
And we were like researching about this place, and it was like a Rococo castle, and we thought, wow, the Rococo time was a time where they just stayed in their castles and had their extra time there, and freaking out a little bit, like in Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain. It's a little bit the same. And so we thought, okay, we want to bring those spirits back into this place, but spirits and ghosts in a kind of modern way, because the museums are entered at the moment by some other vibes than old male painters. And so it was a little playful, it was just a playful way how to just let those ghosts in there. So we had a very good costume designer. She went to a huge, what's the word, fundus?
Like a warehouse.
A warehouse of costumes of a theater, a huge warehouse where you get all the Rococo costumes and stuff. And she suggested us the costumes, and it was you and her doing it. You are also really good in costumes.
Maria Strauch was her name.
Yeah. So you're right. It was absolutely coming from the theater.
Yeah, these characters, there's like this aspect of them that they're coming from another time, but the masks make them very contemporary and quite menacing for me, at least.
I find castles like often quite menacing. I think in the UK there's this great series called Horrible Histories, which sort of puts it on very much, it's very on point, because like a lot of the histories of these sort of places are quite bloody, and where all the money came from in the 17th and 18th century, you can imagine, and where the people who then had owned these castles and disappeared to after the Second World War, you can also imagine. So it's often like to try and signalize that in a way that you can like imagine your way into is often something that fascinates me. And plus, I really love the skull mask, because it reminds me of a John Duncan piece, which is a really menacing artwork where he would go to the house of his friend, wearing this mask, and knock on the door, and then take a gun and shoot past them.
That's terrifying.
But that's just like something like an Easter egg, I guess.
There are so many things going on in Black Kryptonite Mountain, but what about this title? How did you find it? What does it say?
I was researching about a person to whom you are very connected, but you're so connected that you cannot get apart. And there is like a vibe, like people on the internet talking about your black kryptonite partner. That was the first thing which came up, and I thought, okay, interesting. And then, of course, it comes from Superman, the kryptonite. And Superman, they took it, of course, from the old Greek myths, like, how do you say?
Achilles.
Achilles. I would say Achilles in German. Or we used a text from Cassandra also. So the idea was that it's the spot of vulnerability. So I think you have it in the Icelandic myths also with Baldur. And in Germany it's Siegfried. He has his spot of vulnerability here between the shoulder. So it was about invulnerability and vulnerability, because I felt a very long time in my life invulnerable, and that suddenly changed. So it was a kind, maybe also because of the pandemic situation, where you had the impression I had the impression I'm climbing hills, mountains, waves, up and down. So I had this title in my head. Yeah.
I think it's a great one.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
There's a microphone.
Yeah, there's a microphone. It's super kalt. No?
It doesn't work. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
I think it works. You just have to.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in like Black Kryptonite Mountain, like I wanted to ask you just about the how you work with sound, especially because like at the beginning, for example, there was a nice sound design kind of trick where you link the tunnel digger and kind of the trip in the in the subway. Mm-hmm. Like sonically, it's very well linked because like you link the genesis and the outcome, also by sound. And I noticed like you use quite a lot of diversity in sound, and even the end is like quite striking with a kind of dance music and the like 3D scan, I guess, of like the object is very specific. So I just wanted to ask you like, how do you work with sound, and like how do you use it, and do you evolve more in that direction in your films?
Well, I have a radio show in Cologne, which I guess influences a lot of the way that we work with sound. I'm especially interested in like how should I put it, musique concrète, in like a conceptual sort of way of finding sort of surprise, like trying to build drama through sound in a way, and trying to tell the story as much through that, and have a sort of a parallel narrative running through the sound as much as possible. So that's a very conscious aspect. It's also like, again, for me, like the sound has a lot to do with like presenting you with other types of signifiers. The work has a lot to, so I guess in some ways it has a lot to do with like this early 2000s video art of people like Oliver Payne and Nick Relf, where they would like very consciously make mixtapes in the video art sort of realm. And that's sort of the tradition I'm following especially, yeah. Although that's something that's, I think people have been making like experimental film in that way for a long time with Jack Smith and Kenneth Anger. And yeah, it's about sort of using the music or the sound as like a portal, and to, to denaturalize the situation in a way. And sometimes it can sort of really focus back into being exactly in that place, and then you can really feel that. You can really feel that you're in one place entirely. That's hopefully the effect anyway.
Sorry. I will also have a question, because I've experienced a similar input in my childhood as you did, just in a parallel world. Like, I grew up in Germany, my parents were from Poland, and then I moved to Iceland. And my question would be if the fact of moving to Germany, in your case also, or do you think that moving out of a bicultural or bilingual context into another world can resolve some of the issues that are when living inside of them, or is it something that you, of course, carry on with you, and to what extent, if yes?
Great question, thank you. I think one thing that you can't ignore are the sort of the socio-economic reasons why you move. And for me, something like Brexit was almost sort of clearly coming after 2008 with the financial crash. So I felt like I felt sort of a necessity to get out of the UK. But it definitely was the case that the culture clash that I felt there of being like, a Pole, but in a Londoner skin, became a completely different thing in Germany. And I think that it's true that there are parallels with Germany and Iceland in the sense that the society is a lot more egalitarian than it is in Poland or in Germany. Sorry, excuse me, the UK. So that, but I think that's just like a hangover of social democracy. It feels like almost like chasing the social democratic ghost around in a weird way, which I hope it remains possible. I hope that but there are like countries that still believe in an egalitarian society and an egalitarian system. But like the core culture clash for me came much earlier when I studied in Cambridge, and then like realized the background just of the people that I was spending like my everyday with. I think the same thing happens at art school to a certain extent, but especially in Cambridge, there was just like insane disparity between the way perhaps that I'd grown up and the context of my growing up and the way that like people, who studied there had grown up. And that cognitive dissonance probably influenced my time in the UK a lot. So, but it didn't stop me from trying to go back to art school in London though. But that didn't work out very well. So I think definitely.
But you decided after Cambridge to take a suitcase and go to Berlin.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, but I guess you're right. Like I wouldn't have made that decision if I hadn't been there, And
maybe.
And the people who I liked spending time with in Cambridge, they moved to Berlin as well. Mm-hmm. So there was this sense of like, just trying to find places that were cosmopolitan and that could support people being artists, because that's not the case in the UK. Mm-hmm. It's just...
I have another question about roller coasters. Are these like quite very interesting shots of roller coasters in Beasts of No Nation? And like how does it relate with the rest of how do you see the connection with the the other images in the film. I mean, like, we see the flags and Brexit and the narrator telling us stories. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I saw the first version of Krzysztof's Beasts of No Nation cutting, and I somehow had in my head roller coasters, but roller coasters that don't work and function anymore, like Coney Island. And I especially wanted to see going it down, and when it's just touching, it's cut. So some kind of wave, which suddenly it can go up, but it can go very quickly, it can go down. So I think that was this kind of idea, because to me, 2016 with Brexit and Donald Trump, I don't know what came first, I don't remember. But somehow to be honest, the night before Brexit, I thought, no, that won't happen. They will stay in the European Union, and it will be difficult, like very close, the results, but no. And also with Donald Trump, it was weird, because we were sitting in the kitchen and watching the first results, and the people on television were talking about everything is fine, look at Florida, and we thought, like, nothing is fine, it's going really bad, but we couldn't imagine that it would really happen. I don't know. So this kind of shaky times and speed.
Yeah, I think Brexit was the first time I stayed up all night watching the results of an election. It was horrible. But I was the night before I was in Berlin, and I was talking to a Polish artist, and he said, "Well, it'll never happen. There's no chance. Like, there are so many Poles who are integrated into society. I know so many Polish people who work in the media or in banking. They're very influential. It couldn't possibly happen." And at that point, I knew it would happen. Because that was the whole point. That's what they didn't want. That's what they don't want. Yeah. But to go back to the roller coaster, it was really interesting, because I had found the music, which is like the recording of a Luigi Nono record, but like literally the recording of the vinyl, which is why you can hear all the distortion in the background. And it wasn't an association that I had to begin with, but then Laura said, "Well, that sounds like a roller coaster."
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and then I found a film with Vincent Price, like talking about roller coasters. I was going to cut like Vincent Price in, just saying, "I'm Vincent Price." Laura said that's kind of stupid. And she was right. So.
It was interesting because, yeah, it's true that, like, there's this tension building while being on the roller coaster before the big drop, and it goes very slowly, and everybody's embarked on the same wagon, and there's no way to escape or to stop it. So yeah, it very much relates to the feeling of Brexit happening no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, you are, in a way, like, as soon as people start screaming, they're completely alone. You're cocooned.
Yeah.
And there's a great piece by Charlemagne Palestine where he goes up, I think it's in Coney Island, he goes on a roller coaster and he starts to harmonize with the roller coaster, singing them from behind the video camera. And that was just like in the back of my mind when we realized that, yeah, that's the way to go. That's the symbol.
Yes.
I won't need a microphone.
Oh, okay.
No, we're recording, so it would be great if you did. No, you won't need a microphone.
I just have a question on stock footage. So the footage that's used in the film, how you go about, are you getting the rights to them, or you're just adding them into your film, or how do you go about?
Well, I've had a lot of how should I put it? So I've worked a lot with a video artist called Phil Collins, and we've often had this debate. And so I've stolen them. We've stolen all the images, yeah. And I think if we were to release these films commercially, then that would be a problem. But there's a precedent, I think, in the work of Louis Clark, if you know him. Louis Clark, he's a really great animator, and he always cuts to the music of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and he never gets the rights. But he's an experimental filmmaker. He's not releasing his work. Like it's so I believe that in that respect, if we were going to go out and license these films and say, right, we're going to make a lot of money putting them on Arte, yeah, then we'd have to go and get the rights. But in this context, it's not something I've really worried about.
But I'm interested about what you think, since you asked the question.
Well, I do film as well, so I'm just curious to find out, So in this context, I see that I probably would do the same.
Yeah.
I was searching on YouTube for videos of people climbing up K2, especially the dangerous parts like Black Pyramid and Bottleneck, and that's material from K2 of a Japanese climber who posted it on YouTube. I also watched, I think it was last year, from the NASA, the last time they had 8 or 9 hours outside repairing something at the ISS. So it was streamed, we took some parts of it. So we also had this in Switzerland, the Gotthard Tunnel breakthrough. We took it from the television, which was on YouTube. So yeah, it is all elements, or like the guy who was at the cave in South Germany, the Riesending cave 1 year ago, or he was like 1,500 meters in that cave and was very sick, and they managed to get him out again. That is with the helicopter.
But it wasn't a year ago, because if it had been a year ago, we'd have had it in HD, and it was like 420p.
Yeah, but it's a few
It's 6
years ago. Six already,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so it's 6 years ago. So yes, it's all this kind of material, and that was also my question to Chris. But I said I really want to use this material.
I think a lot of it, because of the way that YouTube. Well, look, the one part is that these images that we are constantly imbibing are part of a collective unconscious slowly. So that's the philosophical part. The other part of it is we pay for these images with our data all the time. So there is a quid pro quo going on, I think. And in Germany, and again, yeah, so this got to go back to your question. If we were in the UK, this might be a problem. In Germany, there is a law that says that if you change something by putting it in the context of art, then it's allowable, you know. Although I would really like to talk to the guy that climbed K2. I think that would be really fascinating.
Yeah.
So
I would, yeah. We should contact him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And about like at the end of Black Kryptonite Mountain, there are like all these images that go by very fast. Like, are there also images that you sourced online?
It's a mixture. Like the Cassandra figure pops up at a certain point. I mean, there are pieces of other installations that I've made, like small snippets of all of that. But that work specifically was made for theatre. It was made in Munich, and it took like 2 weeks. But yeah, it's just trying to source like the collective unconscious, trying to find that sort of an expression for it. Really. It's like an everything picture. Like
Yeah, completely overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah.
This would lead me to the question, do you see it maybe as a collage, partly, like the videos that you are doing?
I definitely see them as a collage, yeah. I think it's in that tradition of Merz, and like, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a painterly quality to the works that we try and maintain, and to try and get these disparate textures into resonant space with one another, definitely. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think it's a good description. Yeah. We're still, because it's still a work in progress, and there's still something to do, I think. But I like this kind of structure a lot. Yeah.
Right, I think maybe it's time to say goodbye. I don't have a watch with me.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
We can drink a coffee together.
Yeah,
Coffee
yeah.
and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming this evening, and we can just all enjoy a coffee together just outside of the auditorium.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.